about media services at Duke Law School. And we want to talk today about video conferencing on a budget. I'm sure all of you are in the same boat as we are, where we've been asked to tighten our belts a little bit, cut back. And so we want to give you some options for inexpensive or free ways that you can use video conferencing either for your staff and faculty or students.
Okay, so budgets aren't what they used to be. A couple of years ago, we at Duke Law School purchased an HD polycom unit, and we have it in our control room. It's great, next to all of our classrooms. 3 of our classrooms have HD cameras, so we can do HD video conferencing. We have run into problems with scheduling. So we were tasked with looking at alternatives. And now with our budget being chopped, we decided to look at web-based solutions and look at home-based solutions for faculty, staff, and students who may want to do some video conferencing at home or when we're not available. And also, of course, looking at cheap equipment, because a polycom unit is going to cost you a bundle, whereas if you can get a cheap webcam, mic, or headset, you're pretty much good to go.
One of the things that we noticed, probably in the spring of '08, is that we were being asked to do a lot of video conferences for our international students for their job interviews. And I don't know about you, but if you're going with Hong Kong and you have a choice of 7 a.m. or 7 p.m., after a while that gets annoying. So we talked to our career services office and decided that they would be a good solution for our students. So we set them up with Polycom PBX software. Are you all familiar with the PBX? It's about $150. You can install it on a laptop. And so students could use that in their office and schedule with them rather than trying to tie up our larger systems.
For those of us not familiar,
sure. The PBX software comes from PVX.
Like Victor?
Yes. P is in Paul, V is in Victor, X is in xylophone. It's about $150 from Polycom. And it's a desktop solution that can either be installed, on faculty desktops if you have a lot of faculty who are, giving depositions or, whatever they do. In the privacy of their office, you can install that directly on their desktop, as well as laptops. We have it on our laptop, so if our RAP unit is already employed, we can take that laptop and go to another classroom.
Making a portable solution, really.
Now, and you're using a webcam, I'm assuming?
Right.
Yes.
Right, exactly.
Some sort of mic.
Right, yeah, and we'll kind of get to the setup. But yeah, I mean, just a normal webcam for $20 that you get at Target or whatever will work. So let's go on to our next slide. So, why use video and audio conferencing? Well, first of all, it's convenient. When you have to appear maybe at a symposium or a lecture, and you don't have the money in your budget to travel, you don't have the time, it's a good solution for us to set our professors up with the webcam and one of our several free or cheap alternatives. We interviewed one of our faculty, Jonathan Weiner, and he's also a faculty member at the Nicholas School of the Environment. And so what he talks about is kind of his reasons for doing it, convenience sake, and also kind of the environmental aspects of web conferencing.
Sometimes it's important to be there in person, and you have to have that face-to-face contact. But other times, it's a real convenience to be able to give the talk or participate by video instead of traveling. It saves the time and frustration of lines at the airport, getting through security, flights that are delayed and canceled, and of course the expense of the flight. And it means you can do more things in one day. I've had days when I've given a talk by video in the morning and then attended a different conference in the afternoon. And it's much easier on lifestyle. You can have breakfast and dinner with your kids at the same day that you're giving a talk by video. And then there's the reduction in greenhouse gas emissions or energy use, carbon footprint, which turns out to be a popular selling point for some of the recipients of video conferencing as well. It's hard to calculate exactly, but it seems pretty clear that the increase in emissions from the speaker boarding and flying the airplane are significantly greater than the emissions from the electricity used in the video conferencing itself. So for all those reasons, I found myself using video conferencing more and more each year. This year, I can think immediately of 3 trips that I replaced with video conferencing. One was to speak at a conference in Berlin, one was a conference in Boston, and a third was a conference fairly nearby to my office at Duke University. It was in at Washington and Lee University in Virginia, but I would have had to drive by car to get there, which would have cost fuel and emissions and also a lot of time. And in all of those cases, it was much more convenient, lower cost, and lower impact on the environment to do the talk by video.
And you know, the great thing about video is that he can do all the talking, we can just sit here and watch. Jonathan, so he was mentioning a conference that he appeared in Boston. It was actually through Harvard. And he used Skype, which is free web-based solution. So you don't have to have the PBX software or a really expensive polycom unit. We have another professor who commutes, who's an adjunct, and he's going to talk about kind of last minute or emergency situations that come up that prevent him from making it to class.
Normally, because you guys have been so good at your end, after I discover I'm a Dulles and I can't make my class, all I have to do is call you on the cell phone and call my secretary to reserve something here. Because I work at a law firm, we have a video conferencing capability that's almost unparalleled. I've never had a situation where once we identified the problem, in fact, I couldn't get on a video conference and speak to my students. I must say it also, from time to time, I end up with, because I'm an adjunct and I have a full-time day job, I end up with situations that I can't avoid, where I have to be in New York in the morning, or I have to be in New York in the afternoon, or some other city, and I can't get there from Durham fast enough. So even though it's not optimal, I've been allowed to video conference classes when I simply couldn't be in Durham, even though I do my best to protect Thursdays and attempt to be there all 26 class meetings every semester. But anytime anybody's coming from more than 100 to 150 miles, it is getting the hurdle of getting to Durham, getting there on a timely basis, having time to relax and prepare for class, and then attending the symposium or whatever it is that's being done, means that you waste an enormous amount of time gets devoted just to the travel, where no one's any better off. Because I have a day job, I can often use that travel time to work for other people, and I can do real legal work on my lab. If I was a dentist, of course I couldn't, because I can't drag my patient along with me. But it's if you were trying to set up an internationally video conference thing, I think your video conferencing would be critical. These days, it's a good $4,000 or $5,000 to get from Europe to the United States. So if you're trying to invite someone, say one of Professor Cox's buddies in Copenhagen to come be part of a conference, or ask somebody from Japan to come, it's incredibly expensive to do that. And the downtime of the travel is just a lot to donate to the task. As a law firm, we video conference constantly between our offices with regular meetings that are just attended by doing our internal business. Because if we didn't do that, we constantly have people in the air, and it's expensive, and there's just an enormous amount of lost time.
Yes, these are all recordings we interviewed. That one in particular was from one of our classrooms. We have cameras in all of our classrooms.
That was our polycom
right.
that we used for that.
However, you know, again, you could use Sight Speed or Paltalk or dimdim just as well to mimic that.
But we'll get to all those in a minute.
and all of these clips aren't as long as the previous two.
So, again, one of the reasons that we decided to give this talk is because of the budget. And we have another clip that talks about that. But we also have to deal with students. You know, our students have, I don't know how many, you know, journals and clubs that we have at Duke Law. But they all put on either symposiums or, you know, noontime speakers. They bring guests in. And they also have to deal with resource management because their budgets have been cut. And so one of the things that they are using is video conference rather than flying in, you know, 5 guest speakers for a panel. So it not only impacts our faculty, but the students are also trying to use the resources better.
And this is Professor Liebecker again.
To say the least, it's also low cost. I mean, I have no idea incrementally what you pay and I pay for the telephone line that we have for the short period that I'm on the video conference. But it's a these days it's a $600 round trip ticket to Durham on the airlines, and they've got cancel penalties. So the alternative to do it this way is not only more efficient, but it's less expensive than any other thing I could do. The other alternative, which is just unthinkable, is for me to get in my car and drive 5 hours to teach a 2-hour class, to get in my car and come back. And if the weather's crummy, then driving to North Carolina is not high on my list either.
Right.
Yes.
Which is about a nice 5-hour drive.
The other, I don't know how many of you know Wayne Miller. He's the director of academic technologies, but he and Ken Hirsch have taught a class called Law Office Technology.
In fact, we'll go ahead and plug their session tomorrow, I think at 2:30.
But one of the things that they do is they also bring in people via video conference. And in this particular clip, we have somebody who is up in, I think they're up in, at William and Mary. And they have a court reporter, and they're going to show you some dictation software. But to bring in the guy from William and Mary and his court reporter and all the software is really cost prohibitive. So this way the students get the benefit of seeing that technology without the expense, and it's all done via video conference.
Right, so you're seeing a real-world classroom use of video conference technology.
This is a demonstration of what is called real-time transcription. As I speak, our court reporter is turning every word that I say into text. She is using stenotype, think of it as a form of code, and as I speak, she presses the keys of her machine. The machine, which is a small computer, compares her key presses with the dictionary or database that she has created. If there's a match, we have English. If not, we also have the ability to go ahead and then have phonetic spelling or phonetic symbol that she'll translate.
So again, just so kind of continuing on, like why are you going to do some video and audio conferencing? Document sharing has become very popular. Some of you may already use Adobe Connect or are familiar with it. I wouldn't say it's a cheap option, but we certainly have used it in our management meetings when we all can't get together at the same time. Professor Liebecker even has talked about team building kind of within his law office. Well, I think that can extend to faculty as well by having video conferencing in your faculty meetings. Another really important thing that's happened a lot recently at the law school, legal proceedings. So we've had some professors that have had to give depositions or appear as a witness. One in particular was appearing, I think, as a witness in Australia. And so we had to figure that one out with the Australian folk. And then, of course, bringing in special speakers. This is just a real short clip showing part of the. Oh, go ahead.
And another thing that we have done is Erwin Chemerinsky used to be at Duke Law School, and every year he would teach a class basically to the Florida Court of Appeals, and I don't know how many offices they have, but they had at least 6 different sites. And so he would use the video conferencing to teach 150 people on certain aspects of constitutional law where it would not have worked otherwise. So the special speakers aspect is really beneficial if you just don't have the money or if you have groups in very different locations.
So this is just video of the deposition. Now, we didn't record the audio because it was sensitive. So I decided to use soundtrack.
You have a little cricket back there.
I think it kind of sounds like Moby, but... okay, so now why use free options? Well, because our budgets have been slashed. We've had to slash our budgets by 10%, and that's probably doesn't sound like a whole lot, but it is when you look at kind of how big our law school is. I'm sure a lot of you are going through the same thing. The next thing for us really was ease of use. So I'm sure all of you have noticed that not all faculty are the most tech savvy users out there. So we want to find something that's just kind of simple, double click and let's get started. Also highly portable. If you have something that's either loaded on your laptop or it's web based, where they can just go to the website, again, it's much easier.
Yeah, and certainly lack of technical support. Like I said, Miguel and I are it for media services, and we have a lot of faculty and students who do things in the evenings because of the different time zones for which they're communicating. And so we wanted to offer a solution that they could use if we weren't there to either hold their hand or get things set up for them. And we are going to be getting to the solutions in a minute, so bear with us. And of course, if there are no other options, sometimes our codec breaks down. I won't tell you how many times we had problems with it, but it's not always available, either because we have 2 events going on, or because it's in the shop, or because it's already in use. So we need other solutions, and preferably inexpensive solutions.
Real quick.
Yeah.
Are you guys doing IP or ISDN?
In our wrap, we have both. But all of our portable solutions are IP.
And to clarify too, on the Polycom PVX, that is an IP based. So if you're spending $150, I'd say put it on a laptop.
Don't you get 30 days free with that?
Yes, you do. Right. Yeah. So you can do your free trial and maybe extend it.
Yeah.
Have somebody else sign up.
In all cases of video conferencing, do you just always plug and play, or do you do testing beforehand with every event? Or
We always test beforehand. Preferably, we like to have at least a week notice, and we try our first test as soon as possible. because not all systems talk to each other.
Oh, yeah.
You know, there are firewall issues to traverse. Like anytime Marty Becker has to video conference in, they have to initiate the call because they're behind firewalls at their law firm. So those types of things you have to negotiate ahead of time.
But I mean, do you instill in your faculty that testing is imperative, and that if we can't test, then I'm sorry, we have to say no, or?
We never say no. You know, we're not in the business to say no. We have to say yes, and we have to make things happen.
I mean, likewise at Columbia, but I'm just saying, I'm just wondering if what parameters that you put into the system so that, you know, so that it happens effectively, profitably, and, you know, so you don't ditch the class halfway through because your bandwidth sucked or something like that.
I mean, yeah, I mean, that's the ideal, is to just let them know we need 3 days, 2 days, whatever it may be.
We found that the best thing to do, especially if you have a professor who's never used video conferencing, you can get the buy-in from the professor by saying, hey, you know what, you've never used this before, how about we go down there and do a test run? And 9 times out of 10, the professor wants us to go perfectly as much as we do.
Yeah.
So if you can word it in such a way as to get their buy-in and still do the testing. And they're not, you know, it takes all of maybe 5 minutes.
Yeah. No, I mean, likewise at Columbia, but the thing is, we always, you know, give them the caveat that it's important that we practice, because if he's never done it before, it suddenly becomes a talking head or something. Can you do this same presentation over the phone?
Yeah.
I mean, why is it that we're doing the video conference? You know, and that question is always posed.
And occasionally we've done that. You know, if there are extenuating circumstances where video is just not the ideal solution, we have had them do audio conferences. But rarely do we say no. And we
They just don't like that.
No, they don't. And you know, occasionally things happen where it's the last minute, and you have to scramble to make things work, and sometimes there are delays, and it's technology. Sometimes it doesn't work.
Plan B.
Yes.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, with the PBX software, does it allow you to do desktop sharing? I know with some of the polycom systems you could, but...
Yes, you can do desktop
Okay.
sharing. So here are some of our free video conferencing options. We have not tried all of these, but we were looking, as we were preparing for this, looking out there for different types of solutions. So, how many of you have used Skype? You even have Skype app on your iPhone now. We do. Of course, we actually saw somebody set up all sorts of mirrors to do a video conference on their iPhone. We don't think that works. But we've had several faculty members who use Skype. And we also have, going back to the PBX software moment I forgot, when we redid our law library, we put in 6 conference rooms, study rooms for the students, and they all have the PBX software and webcams on them. So students have as much as 24-hour access to those solutions if they need them.
Right, so they have private rooms, and we also have Skype loaded up on those, and I believe site speed as well.
But Skype is a one-on-one. You know, you have 3 other people, it's not going to work. Similarly, site speed is a one-on-one.
And let me give you a kind of a con to Skype as well, because for those who've used it, you see that you get lots of pop-ups, you know, from somebody in Thailand, right, saying, "Hey, sexy, would you like to add me?" Well, so that becomes kind of a problem. And then, so it's open, so you just never know who has access to what.
So,
what's the difference? I haven't seen site speed. Is there really any? I know they're both one-on-one. Is there really any?
no, you both
I haven't
have.
noticed any difference. I think they both work equally as well.
Yeah, although site speed you won't get the, hey, how about friend of me type thing. But they're both downloads. So for people who are anti-download, I don't want to install anything on my computer, those are probably not the solution.
And both of these do run on Windows and Mac systems.
As well as Linux. Ubu is also a download, but you can also incorporate up to 3 people in your video conference. So we're moving from a 1-on-1 to 3-on-1.
And I think you can upgrade to 6
if you pay.
If you pay. However, I'm not sure the numbers on that, how much it costs.
PalB is a web-based solution, so there are no downloads for that. There is a 1-hour time limit, though. So if you're a little verbose, you may not want to try that solution.
How many people on that one?
Up to 5.
Yeah, because basically, so it's a web-based, so you're setting up a meeting room where 5 people can come in.
But all of these assume that you have the same software on both sides, right? Remote and local.
Right. Yes, that becomes, again, the problem where you have to make sure that the person on the other side has what you have. Yes?
Have you ever heard of X-Meeting?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You have a Mac.
Yeah.
We've not really
We haven't used it, but we
It works great.
Yeah. I think Wayne has used it in his class, but we haven't needed to use that for our faculty yet.
In fact, I can't think of any one of our professors who has a Mac.
Wow. There's only one?
Yeah.
There's a curious X-Meeting is a video conferencing tool that supports H.263.
What is it called?
X-Meeting. X-Meeting, so you can call into a polycom, you can call in anything.
How many maximum number of attendees is there?
It supports, well,
Practical limits.
yeah, I mean, if you were calling into a multi-point, you could dial from multi-point.
It's only 5.
Yeah, that would be just that.
That would be nice.
Is that Tony Weiss's thing in Great Britain? Is that?
X-Meeting?
Yeah.
No?
Somebody in China.
Oh.
Somebody somewhere, I don't know.
Okay, no.
It's a guy
No,
in China,
because-
I know, because of the documentation. It's really hard to read the first time through, but it's really good software.
Oh,
We've
okay.
had some of our faculty actually use it to teach a class remotely.
Yeah, it works great.
Okay,
Yeah, it works
no,
real
because
well.
there was a company that before they got bought by Google was in Great Britain, and they were hawking the same sort of software. You could call into a codec, you could, free
Yeah,
stand.
this is limited in that you really can only call into, and then also that it's only Mac, so it's not, it doesn't get away from the polycom.
But can you go from Mac to Polycom?
Yeah.
That's
Or
what it's
Mac
for.
to Mac, or you could call Mac to Tamberg, you could call anything supposed to.
You talked about PBX, but then you expect the other party to have it installed.
It works with the Polycom unit.
Yeah, but.
Right, so
Okay.
if they have a Polycom unit on
How
the other
about
end.
Tandem?
It works with all of those types of codecs. Site or light size. So the next one we found was Window Meeting, and this is a Flash-based technology. It's browser-based, and it also supports Mac, Linux, and Windows. Up to 5 people.
We can skip iChat, I guess.
You all know iChat, you're sitting here with Matt.
Right.
Well, one person doesn't have
They're running VMware.
Right, exactly. We're actually on the Windows side, or right now, so.
That's right.
And then I don't know how many of you noticed that Callie is actually using dimdim for broadcasting our web sessions. And I actually went there last week and did their little tutorial, and it's very impressive. You can have up to, I think, 20, isn't it 20 people on their free session, and if you upgrade, it's like $10 a month. You can share desktops. It has a whiteboard, so people are drawing, going wild. It has a chat session. The moderator can opt to record or not record. If you record, you can share your URL. You can share your desktop, and you can even extend the moderator. So if you were co-moderating with somebody, you could switch that on and off.
So way to go, Callie.
Yeah.
When you say 20 people, you're not saying that 20 people all video conferencing, like, you know, like I'm taping myself, this person's taping themselves, and you're seeing all 20 people on the screen at the same time?
No. Up to 20 people can participate.
Can participate to view one
Right.
of the
It depends on if you have webcams. Now, we all didn't have webcams. We were just pretty much watching one individual explain the software.
Right.
But if you had a webcam, you could see multiple people.
Right, the little thumbnails.
Yeah. So if all 20 people had a webcam and turned on their video,
feasibly you probably could do it.
you could.
Yeah.
It's a lot like Windows or something.
Right.
Fraction of the cost.
You can pass
Yes,
the
no bridge.
webcam over someone, you can pass
It's
the microphone over
web-based.
someone else in the meeting, but most of the people are sitting on chat, and you've got your speaker, the figurehead, you've got some microphones you can hear, but you don't hear and see everybody at once. That would just be total bedlam.
That's what I'm thinking. It can be funny though when they don't mute their. Yes.
Pal Talk. So it was very cool looking, and I think that's all we figured out. We didn't really play around with it. And again, we've been talking about Polycom PBX. We don't work for Polycom, but it seems to do the job for us. Okay, so Professor Becker, he was a great subject to interview because he was kind of telling us about the practical uses within the classroom and the classroom experience, and kind of the importance of being there for the students, for his class, and then he'll kind of go on and talk about kind of how the students reacted to him video conferencing in.
There aren't practical problems, although there are the normal problems that come with video conferencing. As you're well aware, if you want to talk at the same time I'm talking, it doesn't work very well because I basically blast right over the top of you when I talk, and I can't hear you. So what I tell the students is after the class has started, if they want to talk, they need to raise their hand, and then I can see them just the same way I can see you. If you could raise your hand now, I can see you do it. Yeah, and then I stop, and then we have a dialogue. Since everything's kind of tape delayed, it's not as good as being there in person. It never is. But boy, it's better than not being there at all, which is kind of the alternative. So I've been asked and insisted with the registrar that I always be put in a classroom that has this kind of video conferencing capability. And it's been a savior. As of course, the price of not meeting the class is I either have to come down to Durham on some other day, like a Saturday, or I have to find some other way to present the materials quicker, which usually doesn't mean better. So this, for me, has been an utter lifesaver. I don't know if anyone else has used it at the same pace or rapidity that I have, but it's been wonderful. And the others who are adjuncts must come from much more local areas where they can actually deal with the weather and their practice in ways that I can. I really do have a full-time day job. I normally work 2,200 billable hours a year, and between Duke and the American Bar Association, I frequently work 3,200 total hours a year. So controlling my schedule is a big deal to me, and the video conferencing is just a unique opportunity to meet all my obligations.
So, we're in the business of helping to educate law students, and so it's really important to see kind of how they react to not only having special speakers come into their classrooms through web conferencing means, but also if again, if Marty can't make it to a class, if the students don't like it, it's just not going to work.
To be honest, I think they have fun because it's the same thing you're doing now. All of a sudden, there's this big picture, and I sort of appear out of the ether, and I think they think it's cool.
Mm-hmm.
No one's ever said in the 9.5 years that I've been an adjunct, no one's ever said anything about the times that I have to miss class. I think they're very conscious that as a commuter, I really get punished every single semester physically by getting up at 5 in the morning, not getting back till 10 at night to be there for the 2-hour class. So I think they're very grateful that I can appear at all and have never mentioned anything about the video conferencing. The first time we do it, we talk about the rules of the road. You have to raise your hand to talk, and they usually have to rearrange themselves around the table so I can actually see them. Mm-hmm. But otherwise, the sort of technical problems we often had at the beginning, I haven't had a class interrupted, go down. Occasionally we get feedback, but usually you can figure out how to solve that. Mm-hmm. And we've got people who do video conferencing as a job here. So between my guys and you, I think we've done very good at making it as close to realistic as possible.
So we already showed you some of the courtroom depositions. You mentioned the Courtroom 21 project. Is anybody familiar with that? Okay, a couple folks. It is done at William and Mary Law School. And if you walk in, it's an amazing setup. They have, they have plasmas, they have rear projections, they have screens everywhere. All of the jury have their monitors, they have document cameras. But the thing is that a lot of people are taking advantage of the technology now, and for, like they were saying, that very dangerous individuals, rather than transporting them from the jail to the courtroom, risking escape or life and limb, they're doing a lot of video conferencing now. So the people can they can get their witnesses, they can have direct, all of those things. I don't have the language for it right now. But video conferencing, both for remote locations, you have witnesses who are in counties that perhaps they can't get in, they're disabled for whatever reason, people video conferencing now. And also the evidence sharing, the same type of thing. You can use that for video conferencing.
Yeah, well, let's just run quick.
Yeah.
For years has been, how do you resolve a dispute with technology? Is it any better than without? And the answer turns out that it is not only better with, there are things you can do with technology you simply can't do in any other way. This is how it looked to our counsel. She's bottom right-hand corner. Upper right is in north shore of north coast of Australia. Bottom left are the judges in Brisbane. And the upper left black rectangle is in fact what we call the bridge coming out of Melbourne, and asked us to put on a demonstration trial and show the world what a basic high-tech case would be like.
He was actually speaking from the Courtroom 21 project up there at William and Mary.
Okay, so we presented you with some alternatives, some free alternatives, some options that are out there. Now it's in terms of the equipment, right? So how much are you going to spend? How much can you afford to spend? So let's talk about webcams. Most are USB based, but there are some FireWire. You can have an automatic or manual operation, which automatic can be motion censored, or I think they also have audio. And of course, as we're talking a little bit, different resolutions. So you can have kind of an HD camera, but that's not really necessary if, well, I mean, it really, I guess, depends on what you're trying to do. Some of them come with built-in mics, and we've seen them range from $20 to about $130. Some of the brands that we've used, Logitech, Labtech, Sony, Acer, Panasonic, and Philips. I wouldn't say one is above the other, but I think you could do fine with a $25 Logitech on top of your laptop, and so those seem to do pretty well. Now, so microphones, we have microphones like this that are kind of USB based. They're omnidirectional, which means that it's going to pick up the ambient sound. So, which are great for if you have 3 or 4 people kind of sitting around a table, but you may not want that if you're in an office that's maybe a busy office, or any kind of situation where you don't want all that ambient sound.
And we actually have had really good luck with those. Every year they interview for the VAP candidates, and it's usually 6 or 7 people in a conference room. Inevitably, the people are Skyping in because they're in remote locations. They don't have Kinko's nearby, or a law school, or a place like that. And so we have to put in a nice omnidirectional microphone so that everybody can be heard.
And you can get them as cheap as $10. I would say that you probably will get better audio though from your headsets because they're unidirectional. And we have some headsets out there that are not noise canceling as well. You can have an analog or a USB connection. They run a little more expensive than your desktop omnidirectional, but if you have the choice, I think I've seen some headsets which are fairly cheap, maybe about $20. So again, just with a cheap Logitech, a web headset and a webcam, that's all you need. So under $60, you've got your setup, rather than spending thousands of dollars on your Polycom HD unit, or even $150 on the PDX. So I think that's about it for us. Huh?
I bought a number of used Polycom units from an outfit called 323.TV, and their stuff holds up really well. Turns out our university folks have been buying from them for years, so I get billed for some of their stuff.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
And that's green. So you're reusing something.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And they have warranties, and they've got high def stuff too.
What is that called?
It's I think it's 323.TV. They're based in Kansas.
Yes.
This isn't really about video conferencing, but your discussion of headsets. Remember that in our server room we have Skype, because it's so noisy down there when you're on a tech support call. If you can put a set of noise reducing headphones on, then you can carry on a conversation, a technical conversation, solve a problem, and get together and it's frustrated to death, and you're not constantly muting and unmuting the phone so that you can hear what they say.
Are those expensive? How much?
No, they're fairly cheap. You can get ones that do the job for under $100.
I know with other applications, I give you for instance, if you're doing a remote desktop to somebody else's PC, they have services like LogMeIn or TeamViewer that sort of bypasses firewalls. So it allows you to, if somebody's behind a firewall or if they're natted behind something on a private network, it still allows you to get in and remote into their desktop and work with them. Is there anything that you know that's out there that would bypass firewalls for video conferencing, sort of a middleware where they would contact this server and then you contact that server and it bypasses the firewalls and allow you to do a video conference?
I mean, outside of using a bridge, I'm really not familiar with any firewall bypass.
Wouldn't all the web-based systems
Well, yeah, if you can both use a web base, but if you're using like Polycom to Polycom.
Is anybody using Law School Connect out of William & Mary? They're affiliated with Courtroom 21. It's supposedly free. They provide the hardware and everything.
It's not free anymore. I mean, it's free for the first 3 years.
It's sort of free, but sort of not free.
Right.
One of those.
Yeah, we use it.
They have bridges you can. I mean, you got to pay for it to dial into. That works pretty well.
Duke University has a service where they do that out of, I think, Ohio State.
To answer the gentleman's question about the firewall, it's a tough firewall problem because you have H.323.
You got multiple ports you're dealing with.
Open multiple ports.
Right.
And you got to have some sort of connection tracking software on your firewall that says, that guy opened this port, I'm going to be ready to listen for another port.
Right.
Just wonder if at Duke or if anyone else is doing any kind of video instead of just like the professor that you showed where he's, I think it's lecturing, maybe has some discussion, that something's more about like a clinical type of course where somebody's maybe standing up and giving an opening statement and being critiqued on that, but that's done remotely. If anyone just
We teach our European law, EU law class, because it is small. That's the only thing that I find with the drawback, by the way, to video conferencing is your class size is going to have to be really small. This is not going to work for a lecture room like this. It's just not even going to work. But we do use it for our EU law. It's an online course. Starts off, we have a judge on the EU court in Edinburgh, and he usually teaches the first 3 classes, and he video conferences in from Edinburgh. And the students love it. This is the 3rd year? Yeah, this is our 3rd year of doing it, and the students love the class. But again, that's the biggest limitation with this is the class size. That we really keep that in mind.
Well, we've had people video conference in from like South Africa or other places when we have symposiums, and they certainly can't, for whatever reason, get away, and then they video conference in. And sometimes there are some issues, but you know, it works fine for 150 people. They hear them well. They can do some questions and answers if we have another microphone.
Okay, what are you using to capture these 150 people?
We're fairly wired, if you will.
Right, but I mean camera-wise.
Well, we have our cameras in the classroom, so we have 4 different, I say 4 different cameras that we can switch to.
Okay, and all of that's wired into the polycom?
Yeah.
Okay.
We have used Skype one time on a laptop for a class where somebody had to video conference in, and it was a little tricky, but probably 40 people participated in that.
And I want to just make a quick point too about kind of online classes too. We're not doing it at the law school, but there are other schools at Duke that use Adobe Connect as kind of the way to have their online courses.
I think there was.
Oh, all right.
I'm kind of new to the whole video conferencing thing, and I'm learning, but we use it at our school, Florida Coastal School of Law. We have hardware polycoms, they're integrated into the rooms, touch panels, all of that stuff. And the school loves it and they use it, but the problem we have is it's too much for them. Somebody has to physically be there. And I guess my question was, is the software version of the polycom seem to cut down on some of the user assistance for you guys? Can they figure that out better than having to go into a room and have a remote and the touch panel?
Yeah, for example, it's a little icon on the desktop.
Just
I don't know if you have it on your Mac or not.
I don't have it on mine.
But if, say, you and a faculty member are having a video conference and you're calling in, then you hear a ring and it pops up and says, do you want to answer this call? And you say yes. And as long as we've set it up ahead of time, or even the faculty member where they have a webcam, that's about as easy as it gets.
It's as simple as double click, make the call,
Yeah.
if you know the IP address.
Yeah, cool. It's really simple. I think there was another hand back here. Okay.
I think it's worth mentioning that a good backup and value part in these applications is to pass around a free conferencecalls.com phone number.
Yeah.
And that way, you know, if things die, you don't lose anybody. They can dial back in, you know, if you set up the software. You can dial in.
We did have a page of audio conferences, but we extended that. So thank you for bringing that up.
I just said, like the gentleman here was saying, with the larger, kind of more participation-based classes where you've got students raising their hand, you got to get over there with a mic, or like in the room that you were using, you've got mics for every chair. Are there, including audio and lighting, what are some of the hurdles you've had to, sort of problems you've had to solve with setting a room up so that for the best interaction, environment kind of thing? I mean,
Well, the first thing we have to do is make sure all the microphones are plugged in.
right.
I don't know how many of you have this at your law school, but for whatever reason, our students love to unplug the microphones.
Yeah.
They think what? That people are listening in on them?
The goosenecks.
So we always, yeah. Or the windscreens get gone. You see them walking
Yeah.
around on the end of pencils or fingers. So that's the first hurdle. Lighting generally isn't an issue.
Right.
Because most people, you have to have good enough light for everybody to see on both sides.
How many mics are running into, eventually they're all running into one audio input?
Right, we
Yes.
have, just one mixer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
we have
so you guys
student
are just
and faculty.
so you're just using, like in ours, we have, so you have cameras both in the front of the room as well as in the back? Right, wow. And you're using like a boundary mic to pick up the room. In other words, the students, 150 students don't have mics in front of them. They're
Yes,
using
they
the
do.
boundary mic. They have mics in front of them.
Yeah.
Wow.
2 for 1.
You guys hired it?
Maybe.
I saw that at Georgetown.
Spare one microphone.
Cool. Yes.
At the University of Akron, not the School of Law, but the main campus, we have our distance learning, and it's set up as just like a normal classroom, and like you guys, every person has a table mic, and when you actually push the mic, either this camera or this camera will zoom in on that section to
Like
person,
that.
and that way.
But you have just one specific room for the entire university.
No, we have 12 different distance learning rooms, but that's the whole main university, and we use that for ours because it's cost effective. Law school wouldn't have it, but as far as like doing a whole bunch of people, you get they use Tamberg and they use Sony. I don't remember but they were the same
The
ones
life
that
size?
were. Yes, they were the same ones that were downstairs in the keynote speakers room. But they zoom into whichever mic is actually.
That's a nice option.
Yeah, pretty cool.
If you have money, you can practically do anything. Because we have a Handberg system. There's a touchpad. It tells you all the seat location. So based on the order in which they raise their hand, you can cue it. So then it will answer that way.
Yes, sir.
As we go up into audio video nirvana here, I have kind of more an IT question. Have any schools deployed Skype proxies? Has anyone got any experience with that at Emory, where because of the huge uptick in usage of Skype and because of some security concerns with the way that Skype works, the university IT department is considering deploying a Skype proxy and stopping Skype at the firewall.
That's something that we have talked about because there is that worry but
We haven't made any.
we haven't, right.
So, just wondered if maybe someone had done
We did
it.
block it for a while.
I'm sure that
Back on.
yeah.
I think we've locked ours down so you can't use Skype on campus. We use NAC. I'm pretty sure we've locked it down so that you can't.
Oprah uses Skype, right?
And now for the guy in the back.
Even though we would love to have the money to do what he was just talking about, in our room, which is exactly the same size, we got like a polycom 7000, if I'm not mistaken. We just have drop mics that are by all these speakers that you have, and they're set up in such a way that they won't pick up your speakers, but they will pick up your voice in the classroom, and it's worked well for us. I mean, it's probably not as nice as that, but it's a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
Cool.
Any other questions?
Ready for the cocktails, I guess? All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.